The Pandaren Revolution, 12,000 years before the Dark Portal. The Thunder King's death weakened the Mogu, but their civilization continued lording over the Vale. The Empire's slaves suffered greatly under Lei Shin's barbarous successors, each ruler seemingly crueler than the last. The final Mogu Emperor, Lao Fei, earned the title Slave Binder early in his tenure. He lived a life of decadence, confident that his supplies of cowed slaves would never diminish. To earn their compliance, Lao Fei would tear apart slave families for even mild transgressions. Parents were separated, children were dispatched to the serpent's spine to die as fodder for the Mantid swarm. It was this very fate that befell the family of a Pandaren brewmaster named Kang. His son was sent to the Mantid, and his wife died trying to stop it. After the Mogu left his home and his life in ruins, Kang nearly succumbed to despair. But soon his thoughts circled around a particular question. Why? Why did the Mogu inflict such pain? Kang meditated on the slavery of his people, and he reached a radical conclusion. The extreme cruelty towards slaves was not a sign of the Mogu's strength. It was a symptom of their weakness. They had grown dependent on their servants. Without them, they were nothing. Kang devoted his life to exposing the Mogu's vulnerability. Apart from those who were sent to defend the serpent's spine, no slave was ever permitted to touch a weapon, a crime punishable by death. Thus Kang taught himself to use his own body as one. To elude the ever-watchful eyes of the Mogu, he learned to disguise his attacks as an artistic dance. When he had finally mastered his techniques, he challenged his fellow slaves to strike him. None could. His dancing, his flowing movements, kept him free from harm. The slaves begged Kang to teach them how to fight unarmed. Kang did, and the word of this strange new combat method spread quickly among the oppressed people of the Mogu Empire. Hundreds of slaves adopted Kang's teachings and devoted themselves to learning this newfound art, known thereafter as the Way of the Monk. The rumors of the movement reached Mogu ears. Kang relocated his followers to Kung Lao Summit, fully aware that his apprentices were not yet strong enough to topple their oppressors. In secret, the Pandaren rebels built a monastery among the wind-lashed peaks and began to further train themselves as instruments of justice. It was at Kun Lai Summit that Kang found something utterly unexpected: the prison of Zhen, the White Tiger. Kang communed often with the August Celestial, learning the secrets of inner strength that lay within every heart. The Pandaren master passed along Zhen's wisdom to his followers. At last, the Pandaren monks were ready to fight. Their first major victory came at the Mogu Shan's vaults, the sacred chambers that housed the engine of Nalaksha. There, the rebels successfully drove the Mogu away from the source of their flesh-shaping power. The Pandaren's devastating attack prevented the Mogu from creating any new twisted soldiers. This single victory not only hardened the Pandaren, but also drew other races to the rebellion. The Hosen, the Jinju, the Grummels, and a burly race of bovine creatures called the Jungle all joined the effort to topple the Mogu Empire. Bit by bit, the revolution grew. Kang was right. The Mogu had grown too reliant on their slaves, and as more rebelled, the empire fell into chaos. The Grummels, masters of communication and trade, disrupted Mogu supply lines. The mighty Yungle led raiding parties to wreak havoc in the northwest. The Willy Hosen dug tunnels to infiltrate the mightiest Mogu strongholds. The mystic Jinju communed with the waters of the land to glean the future, telling Kang's forces where to strike and when to run. Eventually, Lao Fei's forces retreated to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, the royal seat of the Mogu Empire. Kang knew the enchanted land could sustain them for as long as they desired. Thus, to defeat the Mogu, the rebels needed to expose themselves and launch an attack. Kang did not hesitate to do so. He personally led the charge, striking deep into the Vale. He fought Lao Fei hand to hand and defeated him, but the Pandaren sustained mortal wounds in return. The slave binder and the former slave died together. Flushed with victory, some of the freed slaves considered seeking revenge against the surviving Mogu, butchering them as they had butchered their vassals for millennia. Yet, one of Kang's most promising students calmed their bloodlust. As a secretive keeper of Pandaren history, the pupil Song had memorized many of Master Kang's philosophies and tales. Song retold Kang's stories again and again to the liberated slaves, reminding them about his commitment to true justice, not revenge. He walked from one end of the fallen empire to the other for the rest of his life, sharing Kang's wisdom and urging all creatures to find emotional balance within themselves. As Song's story spread, others began to follow in his footsteps. More and more Pandaren traveled the land, telling stories and encouraging inner peace in all they met. These lore walkers, as they would eventually be named, became not only skilled storytellers, but also conflict mediators, diffusing tense situations with allegories and parables that would help all sides see reason and find a middle ground. So began a time of peace and prosperity in and around the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. The Pandaren, along with the other races that called the region home, flourished. A new empire, one built on the principles of justice, wisdom, and benevolence, emerged to watch over the war-torn land. The Shah. When Zhars died, its blighted remains scattered across the Vale of Eternal Blossoms and the surrounding regions. In time, the old god's evil seeped into the land itself. During his journeys, Song became keenly aware of this dark power that lurked in the earth. Zhar's lingering essence latched onto and amplified negative emotions, giving rise to malevolent spirits known as the Shah. By spreading Kang's teachings, Song hoped that he could help the Pandaren and the other races negate the old god's influence and nullify the Shah. Yangul Migration. When the Mogu Empire was at its height, an intelligent bovine race known as Yangul roamed the grassy plains of central Kalimdor. These burly creatures lived in harmony with nature, following the guidance of the wise demigod Cenarius. Unlike many of the other white gods, Cenarius was more humanoid in appearance. The majestic half-stag, draped in a cloak of flowers and vines, often walked among the nomadic jungle. He taught these creatures the secrets of the wilds, and he delighted in watching them flourish. Eventually, the Yangul grew wary of sharing hunting grounds with the nearby trolls and decided to seek new lands. Although their beloved demigod Cenarius urged them to stay and make peace, they set out to the south. They hunted and foraged for food all the way to the edge of the Mogu Empire. The emperor of the time, Quang the Merciless, found the Yangul and their immense physical strengths fascinating. He ordered his flesh shapers to capture the nomads and transform them into even mightier and more intelligent servants, while at the same time tempering their more savage instincts. The Yangul suffered under the tyranny of the Mogu oppression for generations, until they rose up alongside the other slaves to overthrow their cruel masters. Although the Yangul gained their freedom, they had lost much. Their strong oral storytelling tradition had all but vanished due to strict Mogu laws that forbade them from discussing their heritage. Much of their rich history had faded away. Some Yangul clung to the faint memories and incomplete myths of a benevolent demigod who had once watched over them. Others insisted that the Yangul should abandon all tradition and forge a new destiny by force. The disagreements grew heated and, on certain occasions, even led to bloodshed. Most Yangul despised the violence and set out to the north, determined to return to a life of hunting and living among the spirits of nature. Some of the more nomadic tribes traveled all the way across the continent, only stop when they reach the frigid climes near the storm peaks. Other tribes settled in the balmy areas of central Kalimdor and reunited with their ancient benefactor, Cenarius. Returning to their ancestral hunting grounds allowed them to rediscover their old traditions. Those who studied with Cenarius learned the druidic magic of the natural world, while others mastered the arts of wielding shamanic powers. Yet, not all Yungol left the Vale. Those who stayed behind quickly found themselves at odds with the Pandaren and other liberated slaves. The Mogu flesh-shaping had not completely subdued the Yungol's bold nature, and conflict after conflict ignited over matters of land and resources. Fearing an open war with their former allies, the Yungol moved west, settling outside the Serpent Spine. That left them exposed to the Mantid, and every 100 years the swarm would threaten to exterminate their people. The Mantid cycle and the constant infighting among these Yungol led to a strong warrior tradition, one that would make them far more savage than the tribes that had gone north. Over the passing generations, and the energies emanating from the Well of Eternity and keep rotting machineries around Kalimdor changed the Yungol in unique ways. Those near the Vale would keep the name Yungol, though they grew more warlike than their distant cousins. Those in central Kalimdor, close to the Well of Eternity, would take the name Tauren. The tribes that ventured to the north near the Forge of Wills would be called Tonka, and they would adapt to the region's icy terrain. These far-flung groups maintained contact with one another for many years, but when the Great Sundering eventually shattered the world, all connections between the tribes was lost.